Hello, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the Because Football podcast. This is your host, Andrew. Today, we're welcoming to the pod Erik Stover, CEO of the New York Cosmos. We're going to get into some of his background personally and professionally, as well as the Cosmos journey, how it is a lens for looking at American soccer and what their plans are as they plan to open a USL League One franchise in the coming year. So, Erik, first of all, welcome to the podcast.
Andrew, thank you for having me.
It's a pleasure. I would love to get into your personal story first, hear some of your background.
Sure.
I think a great way to do that is, what's your earliest memory of soccer?
This will be I don't know how many folks you've interviewed. This will probably be the most off the wall answer you ever get.
Bring it on.
So I grew up in Williamsport, Pennsylvania in the late 70s, 80s. No one played soccer. Home of Little League Baseball. No one played soccer. So my earliest memory is a kid moving to our town that was a good soccer player and wasn't playing baseball, and I couldn't understand it. And I'm like, this doesn't make any sense. Why would you play this sport? Nobody plays this sport. That's my earliest soccer memory. And then I grew up, never really played it. So it was really later in life that the passion and love for the game came in.
I think that is a great American story. We have some of our guests have similar to you, a kid in the neighborhood who introduced them or whatever it is. But I love asking that question, especially to any American guests we have, because there's such a diversity of answers and backgrounds. What was that hook then? Was it a professional step? Was it something like personally as a fan? What kind of then later in life did bring you into the game?
Yeah, so I worked out of college. I worked at the Meadowlands Sports Complex, and we had everything there. Continental Airlines Arena, Giant Stadium, horse racing track. We did everything. We were busy just about every day of the year, and that included soccer coming in. And when I was managing Giant Stadium, the Metro Stars of MLS were playing there, and I still wasn't catching the bug. The stadium was 90% empty, and it just wasn't a great atmosphere. But then we had Manchester United Roma friendly match. That's right when Tim Howard had just transferred from Metro Stars to United. We had sold like 50,000 tickets leading up to the game, and then on game day we sold 30,000 on the walk up. It was insane. Wow. People were still coming into the stadium in the second half. Tim played the second half, had a great 45 minutes, and what really changed it for me was Ruud van Nistelrooy scored a goal in that game. It was just absolutely insane in a packed house. His back was to the goal. He took a pass off his chest to the side, full volley, top corner, and I was just blown away. And the place went bonkers, and that's what started it for me. And not long after that, I went to San Diego to manage Qualcomm Stadium, and I was trying to use soccer to help bring the stadium back and be profitable. So. It's just was a little bit at a time, and here I am now.
I'm so glad we got the Ruud van Nistelrooy shout out, because that was about the time I was becoming obsessed with soccer. For me, like 99 Women's World Cup was huge. 2002 World Cup, saw a game or two, but the time difference and everything. And then at that time, I had seen United when they came to Philly. They played Barcelona. Ruud was like my favorite player. I tried to do my hair like him. I didn't succeed. I tried to do like that when I was in 6th, 7th grade. But that's incredible hearing the numbers and just kind of that outpouring of people, even in the second half, still coming into the stadium. You mentioned going out to San Diego, managing Qualcomm, being part of that. I know that managing facilities has been a big part of your background. Now moving into, and then obviously being manager director at the Red Bulls with the previous incarnation of the Cosmos, directing there too. What's kind of been a similar thread or something that's driven you throughout your career?
Wow, that's a good question. My career path in the beginning, I had a very determined idea where I wanted to go, and wherever I was, I saw the next step pretty clearly, at least for me. And the first, to mix metaphors, the first real curveball was soccer. I grew to really appreciate it and like it. I remember watching the World Cup where France lost to Italy in the shootout. I forget what year that was. It would have been the early 2000s, but and like, that is burned in my brain, the headbutt with Zidane and
Zidane, yeah.
Materazzi. And I actually spoke to Materazzi on the phone the other day.
Wow.
It was kind of a weird experience.
You asked him
That's
what he
like
said.
one of the most famous moments in sport history, and I'm talking to the guy. Yeah, so going to Red Bull was largely about stadium management, stadium construction and operation, and my goal was to become a club president. But I was in my early to mid 30s, and through a couple things that happened, I was promoted into that position, and it that was amazing. But to accomplish a career goal like that at a young age, but then also very overwhelming. So many things happened that first year that even a seasoned veteran would have struggled a bit with. But yeah, it was that's really the turning point for me in soccer.
And I know, after spending quite a bit of time at the Red Bulls, and bringing in like Henri, for example, right, and then being moving into being with the Cosmos, who we're definitely going to get to in a moment. That this is the new story. Also, it's an old story. It's very emblematic of American soccer that we're going to get to. But before we get to that, because this is such a global game, and it's something that I love to talk about, whether it's with our guests we've had people from every continent. I've been fortunate to experience the game on all those continents too, and it's really is a common language, a common thread that ties people together. I think what's fascinating looking at your background is after you were COO with the Cosmos, you then really switched it up and went to Denmark. You're the CEO of, was it Academics, if I'm pronouncing that right, in Copenhagen?
Yeah, the
I'm
easy
curious,
way is
right,
AB.
like, yeah, like that's, and I think especially we're at a time now that might have been kind of some of the beginnings of it, but we're seeing now a lot of American investors, American capital going into European soccer. They're the obvious ones with your welcome to Wrexham's. Tom Brady is an investor in Birmingham City. We've had the Glazers at Man United. You brought up Roma. There's so many ties in Serie A really around. But for you, kind of what went into that decision, moving your family over to Denmark and doing there? And then what did you learn from that context and that more European approach that you feel like has maybe enriched some of your perspective and whether it's skills or just kind of philosophy now?
Yeah. So really, this goes back to it's COVID time, and I'm consulting with a number of European clubs. Had been doing that for a long time. We were representing big European clubs here in the United States, clubs like Schalke, Eintracht Frankfurt, FC St. Pauli. But COVID really hit that industry very, very hard. So anybody doing any international marketing, that was like the first thing that was pulled back. But we were still successful doing some really cool, fun things. But because of the pullback, I had some time to work on the restoration of Hinchliffe Stadium. And I was working on that, and we were talking about the vision that this stadium that I'm sitting in now was going to be a hub for soccer for decades to come. But it wasn't going to happen immediately. It was going to take time to get to that. It was going to take minimum a few years. And so I had the opportunity to go to Europe, which is something I always wanted to do. My wife and kids were open to the idea. And Copenhagen is one of the most beautiful cities in the world. It's one of the best cultures to live in. And it was a great experience for us to have that. on the football side of things, learned a lot about how European football works. Interesting thing about Denmark is it's 10, 20 years behind many of the other countries in Europe and how they function commercially. Same thing in the rest of Scandinavia. It's still very much old school club mentality. You support your club, whether you're a fan in the stands, whether you grew up playing there, or you're now a successful executive and you support the club where you need to. All of that ethos is extremely important, but it's also sometimes can be to the detriment of the success of the commercial success of a club. So seeing that up close, talking to people and balancing those ideals with everyone understanding that commercially things need to change. That was a very good hands-on experience. And so many other things, like just being at the training facility for AB and seeing what that means to the community. Like here, you would never have a training facility for a professional sports team where there's no fences, there's no gates. Anybody that wants to walk through can walk through. Anybody that wants to go into the facility, there's a bar, restaurant in the facility that's open to the public. And I think those concepts are really valuable. And then for us here at the Cosmos in Patterson, there's a way for us to bring that here. It maybe not the whole openness of it, but much of it. And those ideas are in the back of our mind as we build the club out.
Yeah, you touch on, I'm glad you brought that up because you touch on something that comes up for me a lot, like being someone who had grown up in the US, accustomed to a professional American sports thing where you feel a part of it, but everyone knows at the end of the day, there's like with our structure and kind of the contextual history of American sports is like, these are franchises, and yes, they have a footprint in the community, but everyone kind of knows, like you talk about things like back in the day, the Baltimore Colts going to Indianapolis, or you have the Brooklyn Dodgers going to LA. Like we've seen that thing happen in American sports. There's only one example I can think of that really in most of European sport and football. And so there's always this piece of like, what is the game for? What's the purpose? And a big piece of that is the community, like you saw in Denmark. Right. But then a lot of the conversations I hear recently, especially from an American investor and American executive and management perspective, when it's applied to the European context, is this like, how do we still stay true to that community attachment, to that tradition? How do we honor that there are third, fourth, fifth generation fans here? Like for me, my club I support, other than the Philadelphia Union, is Port Vale in England of League One, small community, Stoke-on-Trent. Without that club, there's really nothing in that community for people to rally around. And so I think that's a beautiful thing that the game offers. And then you have the other side of the scale where it's the financial viability, where it's being able to make money to actually improve and scale the club. That improve word can be up to discussion based on perspective. But sure. I think the fact you're bringing that back here is fascinating. It's something I think that you talk about learning and exchanging. I think that's a real core of the conversation when we look at this like cross-Atlantic type of movement now. So you mentioned Hinchliffe Stadium, you mentioned Patterson. That's been announced as the new home of the Cosmos. The Cosmos as the name of the club, as of, let's say, the entity that was North Jersey Pro Soccer that you've been spearheading, is also a recent announcement. So congratulations for putting that out now, and I'm sure it feels like finally, some things actually share after building privately and all this time. But I want to talk about kind of this context. We're going right from tradition and past and background. North Jersey is a part of the country you could argue has been one of the most formidable from a talent perspective, but also from a soccer culture perspective has been so important. I'm going to give a quick history lesson to some of our listeners, or at least a refresher. Going back all the way to the 1880s, we have Clark's Our New Thread, in the North Jersey area, that kind of Newark Patterson being one of the first ever successful clubs in United States soccer in general. Then we go to Patterson FC, where you guys are going to be based. 2 Open Cup wins. They were in 3 Open Cups in 6 years, from late 1917 to 23. We have Carney Scotts, and Carney then producing guys like John Harkes, Tony Mayola, Tab Ramos, who have been so important in the 90s iteration of soccer. So there's this really rich tradition we have in North Jersey. And then we also have the Red Bulls. We have Gotham being based out of there more recently. Where do you kind of see the Cosmos fitting in that community and being part of that lineage?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot in that, and there's many layers, and there are a lot of things that are coming together here at a critical time, and all at the same time. One of which is just the stadium, the fact that it exists and wasn't torn down, and we could talk more about that later. But really, that what we see as an opportunity here and a obligation is job creation. It could be in the front office. It can be helping manage the stadium, but definitely on the pitch. And I think in the United States, we're very poor at developing players in their mid-teens to early 20s. And that's largely because we don't have enough professional teams. Everybody bashes pay to play, which is easy to do. But there's pay to play in all sports and pay to play in all over the world. But what we don't really have is an academy system that casts a really wide net and feeds into professional clubs. And when you're 16, 17, 18, and you're among the best in your community, you will have a chance to sign a semi-professional or professional contract that gives you the opportunity to become a full-on professional, and then play first division at the highest level eventually, and realize or maximize your potential. That exists in the rest of the world for soccer. It does not exist here. Having one professional club in New Jersey is simply not nearly enough. And with that understanding, the global understanding of how it works, to a mathematical certainty that there are very talented players in urban areas or poor rural areas where they're just not getting a chance and their potential is not realized, whether it's playing soccer or some other business. But especially with soccer, we don't have the infrastructure. We are not giving kids in places like Patterson or Clifton or Wayne or Lyndhurst a chance to develop. And they need that professional environment for many, many reasons. And some of the guys you mentioned over the decades here, that legendary players from North Jersey, both men and women. And to a large part, they've made it on their own. They have natural God-given ability, and they've worked very hard, and they didn't have a pathway laid out for them that's clear the way it is in the rest of the world. So the 3 guys from Carney that you mentioned, they were part of that team in the mid-90s that really helped with the World Cup capture American imagination.
Mm-hmm.
And their work is part of why we're here today. And those guys all found their way through their own hard work. So, you asked about the experience in Denmark. It just drove home what I already knew. Like I knew I've known this was a problem for a very long time. Actually, anybody in soccer in this country knows it's a problem. Everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But having seen it up close and how it actually works, and how much support is in the process, bringing that back home and having that be a driver for what we're doing here is essential.
I think a few things that come out from that answer, Erik, is one, I think it's very clear in this new iteration of the Cosmos here that player development is a massive value for you guys on the performance side, as opposed to if we look at the first iteration of the Cosmos, which was like, I know Bayern has called this, but like Hollywood is like literally all the stars. It's like Beckenbauer and Pele and Canalia and Carlos Alberto and all these guys, and then some US guys. But that was kind of that iteration. And then you guys had coming back in the 2010s. Again, it wasn't the same. It wasn't like a first division. It wasn't that. But you saw guys like Raul, Marco Senna, like big names. But it sounds like now this approach is going to be more on developing this local talent. This is kind of a Cosmos conversation, but also an American soccer one. And it's also going to relate to your guys' decision to go USL League One. So it sounds like you see that kind of the place where the Cosmos will be in US League One as you guys have maybe the license, the time, maybe a patience factor in, and just where you'll be located in this soccer pyramid as kind of like the ability to develop. And why do you think that has been an approach that you guys are leading with now? Because we see on the one side, Cosmos is arguably one of the most recognizable brands in American soccer and a global name. So why do you think, what are the conversations or were the learnings maybe from past experiences with the Cosmos specifically that said, hey, this is the way that we want to go this time?
Yeah, well, the business plan started before the Cosmos were a reality. It goes back 4 years ago. And it started to be very serious before I moved back from Denmark. And during that time, it was not necessarily a Cosmos vision. It was, I was personally hopeful that at some point we could work that out and get the team back on the field. But we were focused on a business plan that mattered for here in this community and for North Jersey as a whole. And the focus all along was on addressing player development issues on the men's side. The women's side, there's still player development issues, but the women's, the biggest challenge is there's just simply not enough jobs. There's so much talent coming out of college, and college is still a very viable pathway for women's soccer players. There's so much talent coming out, there's just simply not enough jobs. So having a professional women's team is a slightly different approach, both on the field and commercially. But for the men's, and our overall vision was always about community approach, modest investment, slow growth, sustainability. And that largely comes from a lot of people are losing a lot of money in soccer in the United States. And I think it's a fundamental flaw in how the business is approached. And if you look at how it works in the rest of the world, there are three basic buckets of where revenue comes from: television, your game day, so ticket sales, sponsorship, concession sales, anything that goes into supporting the game day experience, and then the transfer market and player development. That does not exist the way it needs to exist in the United States. The transfer market here is still very small, and I'll go back to the example of the guys from Kearney. Many of the players that are getting transferred now are still doing it on their own natural ability. Obviously, there are examples of guys that have come up through, say, Red Bull's academy and then into Red Bull's first team, and then they've transferred to Europe, just using them as an example. And they do that well. But they're the only ones in New Jersey doing that. And we could have 20 professional clubs here of some level. It may not be, third division, second division, first division. It could be semi-professional, but we don't have that right now. And to fix that and to be part of the global economy of football, right, being part of the transfer market is critical. And so that means you have to sign players and give them a chance. You have to provide the coaches that understand how this works. Still, professionally here in the United States, our coaches are not playing young players. They're still not doing it, partly because they don't have to, partly because their owner doesn't understand this and isn't telling the coach that this is part of how we run our business, partly because there's no promotion or relegation. So all they're really concerned about is is getting into the playoffs, and they're going to play a journeyman player over a young kid because that journeyman player is more likely to help the team in that moment on that day. But for the vast majority of clubs across the world, and I mean all of them, even the top 20 clubs, there's probably like 5, maybe 10, but definitely 5 that all they're concerned about is winning in those 3 points. They're not worried about developing players because they just sign the best players in the world when it comes to a transfer window. But teams 15 through whatever, it is critical that you develop players. Borussia Dortmund, they have to develop players. Ajax, they have to develop players. Even Arsenal, their academy is still very important to them. It's the clubs like Manchester City, Real Madrid. They're just buying who they want to buy. But even Barcelona, top 5 clubs in the world, their academy is still essential to their identity, and it's essential to their commercial operation. But I think Dortmund's probably the easiest example to look at, and we had a player there, Christian Pulisic, that went in had a passport, was able to go to Germany, and he went at a young age. And I believe he was 17 when they put him into a game for the first time for real meaningful minutes, and I think it was against Bayern Munich in a league match. That is how you determine if this player has what it takes to get to the next level. Not that one moment, because everybody needs multiple chances, but you do need to be tested. And the reason that's so important, without Dortmund doing that and then eventually transferring players, they can't stay in business. If they don't get 50 million euros for this player, 75 for that player, if they don't get that, they don't function. And we don't have that here. And it is a big problem with why our national team isn't better, why we don't have more depth with our men's national team. And it's a big problem why the business isn't commercially successful. So for us, the math, again, is clear. We know there's players here. We know there's talent here. I was just talking to someone yesterday about 2 players that are playing here in North Jersey, high school soccer and rec on the weekends. And that's it. And they're amazingly gifted. Now, that's also like a lot of players in Paris where they're not necessarily in an academy. They might be, but they're playing pickup on the streets and they're developing that way. So you have to be out there and find them. But what has happened here for decades is that players like that never get seen, never get a chance. And when they're 18, 19, maybe they graduated from high school, they go work at Best Buy, and that's their life and that's their career, and they never really had a chance. And so we know that to be the case. We know that just through the mathematics, there are hundreds of players in North Jersey that have the potential to go to a very high level. And I've worked personally with a number of large European clubs that have been trying to figure this out for over 15 years. They know that this country is going to explode with talent, but it's very expensive to come in and own your own club here and operate it. To my earlier point, it's hard to make money. You don't necessarily want to be the first one that's trying to create a transfer market, particularly if you're not from here. So there's a lot in that. There's many layers to that, but what we're doing is based on very sound business fundamentals that have been proven to work across the globe.
I think from that, and talking about just the amount of talent that isn't being seen, that is certainly something that I see as an upside of USL clubs, that if they can build the infrastructure, they can give more opportunities at those key ages you mentioned, like 17, 18 to 21, right? Where guys are kind of making the decision, am I going to go to college here, right, and play, even if they're in an academy system, an MLS academy or something like that, or am I going to get a chance now at a professional level to test myself, as you're referring to with Pulisic? What I've heard from other people within American soccer is a piece of that is, we brought up pay to play. So it's, can you offer opportunities to kids who where it's merit based and not necessarily just on the financial side, which, there's a lot of costs incurred. I think a lot of people that criticize that don't really maybe know the cost of simple things, just like renting fields, insurance, transport, things like that. So I guess that's one question is, are there plans how to subsidize, how to potentially have free academy? But the other, when we talk about paying for that, is in much of the world, you have solidarity payments, right? Or it's much more common that if you're a smaller club in this pyramid, in this, the word I like to use is food chain, are you going to get the upside? And I think that's a big thing that even youth clubs could benefit from. That comes back to the core fundamentals and dynamics within American soccer. When I bring that out, what kind of comes to mind? Do you think that something needs to change there, or you see there is still opportunity within the way the system is currently set up to be able to develop players and then either sell them on within the US or internationally?
Yeah. So you said solidarity payments. Solidarity payments and training compensation, again, is a proven formula that works around the rest of the world. We, generally speaking, don't do that here and haven't for decades. And we're told by people that it was illegal. None of that was true. It is not true. And correcting that ideal is part of our business plan too. So we are going to pay training compensation as it should be paid in the cases where it should be used. So for example, if a player is on scholarship at a pay-to-play system and has been there for 6 years, didn't pay anything, then we clearly owe training compensation. And there is also a formula for solidarity payments. We just apply the global standard. We work together with that club, and that club's now not only not getting screwed by their player being taken from them, but they're making some money off it, and they're proud that their player made it professionally, and they could tell everybody else that's playing with them, you can do it too, if you put the work in. So that's the way it's supposed to function. We're definitely going to do that. But generally speaking, we don't do solidarity payments and training compensation, and it's created much of an us versus them in some markets. New Jersey, Long Island, I've experienced it and lived it. It could be adversarial, but pay to play is not necessarily the problem. Pay to play grew out of the municipalities here in the United States. We're invested in baseball. They're invested in football and basketball, all the other sports. Obviously, there's hockey communities, and kids can play those things, and it's not expensive. And it's not expensive for their families. But soccer wasn't getting the financial support, and pay to play grew out of that. So those teams aren't wrong. But where it's failing is the kids that we've been talking about in urban environments or poor rural environments, not because they're not willing to have scholarships, but even if you offer a scholarship and the kid can come in and play, can the kid get there? How do you travel from your home to where the training facility is? Do you do it every day, up 5 days a week? Can you get to games? A lot of these academies are flying all over the country, which is, to me, silly. It's nice to do it occasionally, obviously. But the amount of heavy travel for the top tier academies is unnecessary in my mind. But that just prices out people that can't afford it. The cost of uniforms. The uniforms are often a big money making process at a club. You can spend over $500 a year just on uniforms if your kid's in one of those systems. If you then apply that to a community like Patterson, where many of the families are at or below the poverty line, $500 after taxes is impossible. Forget it. So yeah, all of these things we know to be a problem, and we've known them for a very long time. And for me, I've talked about it publicly, and I've known about it, but we're just done talking. We're just going to do it. Whether people follow our lead, adapt what we're doing, I believe strongly that this approach is where we're going to hit profitability in less than 5 years. That is rare in professional soccer in the United States. Profitability is very rare. So I think it's a different business model that has proven factors that we can adopt from all over the world, bring them here, use those good ideas. And the rest of the world knows this is coming. They know that the United States is going to be churning out great world-class players quickly, and we want to be on the front end of that.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and so you mentioned as well, part of that is this community piece. It's not just the development, it's not just performance. So you guys are wanting to tap into the community, but building that fan base. Like I'm curious with, again, we talk about the Cosmos brand. There's a lot of context people have. A lot of people grew up, of a certain generation that was a team, and they were, shining for this North Jersey area, parts of New York, and kind of was their way into world soccer. Now, with you guys coming in, one, it's going to be at that USL One level. So some fans might say, well, if it's not Division One, if it's not the top, why am I going to be interested, right? Some people might say, hey, the Cosmos have come and gone, but now I'm a Red Bulls fan, or now I've tapped into NYCFC, or we're just going to Gotham, right, because of what they're building there, and we feel like it's good soccer and a great environment. So what's your guys' plan for kind of maybe rekindling, but also this is a new start of building this authentic fan base at the level you guys are going to be at within U.S. soccer, but also, with some of this competition, whether it is from other clubs in the market?
Well, that goes to the slow growth approach, the modest investing, and the community engagement approach. So I've talked a lot about how it works really well across the globe, and we see that. Like in Germany, they're often selling out 30,000 seat stadiums in the third tier, and that's because that's their club and they love it. So the folks that are like, it's not first division, I'm not going, that's okay. We probably don't want you here anyway. We want people that are going to be passionate about the club. Obviously, the doors are open to everybody. But if people are going on social media and complaining that it's not first tier, then this our journey is probably not for you, and that's totally fine. But again, talking about where we can learn, there are a lot of clubs here in the United States that we can learn from. What Oakland Roots have done, Detroit City has done, Vermont Green has done, and there are a number of others. What they've done over the last 5 years plus, I think, has really changed the perspective of how clubs can be run here.
Agreed.
And that's all a community approach. And if that bit about, well, it's not the top level was true, then people wouldn't watch college football. They wouldn't watch college basketball. They wouldn't watch college softball. There's higher levels of all of those things. But those are a good analogy, because it is about the community. It is about your connection to your university. You might be from that area. You maybe didn't go to the university, but you're from that part of the country where that university is. And that's the closest thing we have to what European and South American clubs are like in their community. But again, it's borrowing ideas and things that have been done successfully over the last 5 years by some of the clubs that I've mentioned. And again, there are a lot of others, but I think the business has changed a lot in the United States in the last 10 to 15 years, and that's one piece of it. And so we're going to steal their good ideas for sure.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned those. It's like Oakland, Detroit. I'll be down Chattanooga in a few weeks. I'm going up to Portland, Maine this weekend or next weekend for a game. They've been selling out, again, USL League One. They'll be one of your opponents. They've been selling out their stadium, the Fitzpatrick Stadium up there. And I think you're right. This is an exciting exciting time. Not only we have the World Cup coming, we have the Women's World Cup in a few years, but seeing the success of some of these community teams and the college example, totally on point. I look at some areas too that have minor league baseball, minor league hockey, that have been able to do a great job of being a kind of a community center. And you want to go see we use the word product, right? You want to go see a good performance, a team that's going to fight on the field, but really it's about being together. It's interesting though as well, because the Cosmos, again, we come back to all the context, all the history, and how it looks different, right? Like And that's a different approach now. We're in a different time in US soccer financially, also talent-wise and culturally. What are one or two of these specific things that you could share that you guys are looking to say, hey, we're here, we are the Cosmos, but we're going to do things differently now? What are a couple of things that kind of excite you about building that connection with fans that you guys are looking forward to implement?
Yeah, well, we can learn from the original Cosmos with one of them. You mentioned earlier the glitz and the glamour and the big names, but it didn't start there. And what Clive Toy was doing was bringing in players from whether they're from outside of the country to come in and play for the Cosmos, or whether they were an expat living here, or their family was a descendant. He had a very diverse roster, and that resonated with the different communities throughout the New York metropolitan area. In the beginning, that meant that 500 people from Brazil were coming to see a player because pre-Pele, I mean, but when Pele comes and Carlos Alberto comes, 500 turns into 5,000. It could be the Middle East with Eskandarian and Iranians coming to see him play, and all of that was part of his long-term plan. And he doesn't get enough credit for it, and it is something that we can use here. There's so much diversity here, not just in Paterson, all around us and throughout the New York metropolitan area. And if we have players from the neighborhood, the family and friends of that kid will come out to these matches, especially if we're authentic and true to that. I think we did that the last time in the 2010s with the Cosmos. We signed a number of local players: Sebastian Guinzotti, Carlos Mendez, Danny Sotella. They were all local guys, and those players meant as much or more to a big part of our fan base than Marcos Senna or Raul. Those guys were awesome too, but that community connection is critical. You know, we're hyper focused on that because it creates a lot of opportunities for us on and off the field. But one other thing that's critically important for us heading in the next few years is promotion and relegation. That did not exist before. That is a massive game changer, to be able to talk about hope, that you can grow and be bigger than something that you are, but do it authentically and real in your community, and be in an 8,000 seat stadium, but just do it the right way. That I'm certain will resonate with the fan base, and will help us with our sustainable approach grow over time. One of the pressures we had in the past was, we were going 100 miles an hour immediately, and the world was watching, and it was a very different soccer landscape here, and we had to be successful, and we had to spend money, and we had to do it from day one. And when I remember the criticism from the first game we ever played, that it wasn't the 77 Cosmos. Like, yeah, no shit. Nobody starts there. The Cosmos didn't, of the 70s, didn't start there. They had a 6-year run up to 77 in the sold out Giant Stadium. So I know it's something that's going to resonate with the community, and I think this community is primed for it. What is also important, we interviewed a coach yesterday, and this is going to come naturally with promotion and relegation, but it doesn't really exist to the level that I think it needs to exist in soccer in America, and that's intensity. A lot of the matches that are played here don't really mean a lot, and the fans could feel it, they could see it. It doesn't have to be the highest level in the world, but going back to the college sport example, those games are played with intensity. Like women's softball is a massive sport in this country now, and part of it is how intense they play. They're throwing their bodies all over the place. It means every pitch means everything to everybody. So when speaking to the coach, the only question I asked was, it wasn't really a question, it was more of a statement. Like, this team has to play with intensity. the kids that are playing have to understand that they're constantly auditioning, that the community needs them to do well, to have a greater economic impact, and that we over time are going to want to be promoted. And the only way you can accomplish that is if you're playing 100% every game. And so it was an important comment for me in that interview. And I think that's a differentiator that we will bring to the pitch when we start playing next year.
When I look at your background as well, you had, managing Qualcomm Stadium, you're part of the Meadowlands Sports Complex. I think a big part of the drive to not only get fans interested, but keep them, especially when we talk about an American soccer context and the commercial side, is that game day experience. It is the stadium, because for as much as, we're talking about a lot of these things that go deep in soccer circles that are interested, a fundamental of American soccer is that there is a wide variety of backgrounds, not just culturally, but like context for soccer. So you have the people who have, been there from day one, who eat, sleep, breathe it, who are watching games in Europe and here in North America constantly, who are just totally immersed in the game. You also have people who are like, we're in your area. We're just kind of looking for something interesting to do. We need an outing. We need something for a group. So with your background with stadiums and events, like what are some of the things you guys are looking to do to really showcase Hinchliffe Stadium and what you're going to offer to interest people that, oh, Cosmos, that might be the first time they've heard the name. They don't have the context, but how are you guys going to try to bring them in and still, we talk about profitability, commercial success, like what's going to be important for you guys with that strategy?
Some of it's just old school sports business. The stadium is great and has a lot of history, and coming here is an experience. It's also where we are, right next to the Patterson Great Falls. So we're going to have our activation zone pregame and postgame out in the park. It's literally, I'm looking right now at the falls, 100 yards away. So live music, food trucks, sponsor activation right here on the property in a beautiful setting to come to the game earlier, stay a bit longer, and really experience that. And then the other part of it is the modern business and our tech stack and how we're going to take our concept around being a member of the club, but actually make it work for you as a consumer. So that the simplest way to imagine it is we have an extremely powerful app on your phone, and that's how you're managing your tickets, your concessions, you're buying hot dogs, you're buying beer with it, you're buying merchandise. You might be interacting with the scoreboard on our app live in the game. And we're building all that now. And we're building it in a way that is somewhat common in Europe, but is not common at all here, because that data and that CRM lives with the big ticketing providers. We're doing it differently. We're going to know the data. We're going to be able to interact with our consumers. And it's really important for this market. So I mentioned that many people here are at or below the poverty line. Well, one thing that I always want to do with my teams is make it affordable for kids that are in school to come to the games. I know our managing partner, Baye Adolfo Wilson, it's extremely important for him, for the kids to be able to come into the games. Well, everybody has a phone and they can download the app for free. They could be a member for free. But if they're getting messages that, oh, there's $5 tickets this weekend, and because you're going to Eastside High School or Kennedy High School, just buy now, it's only $5. That's extremely powerful to accomplish all those goals. And to have that in your pocket and to know who to talk to like that is going to be very important for us.
Yeah, it's interesting. You bring up kind of the old school and then the newer, and talking with people within the game that word of data, is coming up a lot, just to get more of a sense of fans, not only who they are, but what they're interested, what they're relating to. There's so much value to be gained from, qualitative data in terms of talking with fans, hearing what they say, but then some of these other things are key. And I think, again, is a sign of kind of how you guys are are evolving and adjusting that mission. And it's exciting to see, and I know we're seeing it from other clubs around the country, and has been part of this kind of newer area that I'm excited to see the Cosmos step into here, with all of the challenges, the ups and downs. I heard on another interview you did, you referred to maybe some of the trauma. You even used that word, I think, in a somewhat, I'm sure in some ways, a joking manner of previous incarnations, right? Like what's kept driving you? What's kept you moving forward? Because within the soccer world, some people are rolling their eyes at, okay, Cosmos again, or how is this going to work within a really dense market? Some people would say, like, what has kept driving you through all of that to make this thing a reality again?
Yeah, thank you for that question. That's a good one. And I try not to talk about myself with any of these things. It's really about the club. But since you asked, this bit's about me. So had a lot of things happen. This is a tough business. There are some not so great people in it. And we've all seen the stories of corruption all over the world, and you come in contact with people that do bad things, and it's very disheartening. But you also see how much good it can do. And there's a lot going on in the world that's a bit scary. There were worse times here in the United States. There were worse times globally. But instead of doom scrolling on social media, I've gotten rid of all that. Really have nothing except LinkedIn. And instead of doing all that, what good can we do? Well, this is as much good as I could do. For me personally, we could build a club around all these ideas. And again, it's not just soccer. We're going to do arts and culture and other sports and activities here to build that club and that base, that membership as big and as wide as we can. But all in the service of helping this community. How can we help people better themselves? How can we help kids get off the street? There's huge pressure on schools across the country with underfunding or no funding. So what happens to the music program? What happens to the chess program? What happens to track and field? All these things are in jeopardy of being lost if they haven't been lost already. So what we can do here, because we have this facility, we have this space, is use it for the betterment of the community. And then we have a vision to do more and build more, whether it's a training facility or mixed use development. All of those things are in our long-term plans, but always with the idea of building the club that then helps the community. So for me personally, it was about that. There was a few weeks where I was just like, this business and the people in it, I'm done. And toyed with the idea of going into not-for-profits. But the idea of USL and where USL was going and this stadium and who Baye is as a person really pulled me back into really getting 100% committed to doing the right thing here.
Yeah, I think from that, it reminds me of actually our previous guest. We had CEO of Port Vale. Again, I'm bringing them up, Matt Hancock. He was saying how they also feel like this game has a social obligation, right? Like soccer and then sports teams in general have a social responsibility, which again, we come to this cultural differences with the US, with European or South American. What you're saying, the vision you're painting, reminds me a lot of whether it's a Boca Juniors that has a basketball team and they have a field hockey team, they have all this, or it's literally just like the little neighborhood club that everybody gathers around for a variety of sport and culture activities, like you're saying. It's a model that we don't often see in American soccer, but I think, and you give that context of there's a lot of tough things going on. There's a lot of like real practical challenges, whether it comes to funding, access for people, that I think soccer clubs have so much to be able to offer. And it can help to sustain the clubs as well and keep them going and help us scale to continue to do things. So it's great to hear that, and we're excited to kind of see the developments and things as you guys move along. As we come to the end of the episode, Erik, we're gonna lighten things up a little bit. I'm going to hit you with this one. I will clarify first. There's really no rules for this first one. This is we want to know your all-time five-a-side team that you're gonna that you would choose. The fun part is you have to pick yourself. You have to play. So it's you and 4 all-time players. Could be living, past, any level, men, women, whatever. We had somebody pick Gordon Ramsay the other day because apparently he played soccer back in the day. I didn't know that. And then we obviously have your obvious usual suspects. So you're going to who are you taking with you to go on the pitch, 5-a-side? You could have a keeper or not, your choice. So it's you and 4 of your all-time favorites.
All right. This is a good one. Well, I'll start with people close to my heart. So I'll start with Pelé, for obvious reasons.
Had to be.
Arguably the greatest player to ever live. And my philosophy is going to be attack, attack, attack. We're not. I'll get to how we defend later, but we're going to outscore everybody. The second one close to me is Thierry Henry, and no more fierce competitor that I've ever met. So got to have him on the side. And then it's 5-a-side, so I'll say Ronaldinho, just for the creativity and the brilliance. And Ronaldinho at his peak. I don't know that there was a better player. He didn't keep it going for long enough time, but at his peak, as good as he got. And then, it's a bit of a cop-out. It's a bit of an easy answer, but then Messi also, for all the same reasons as Ronaldinho, but he actually has done it for his whole entire career.
For sure.
And then I'm going to mix sports for my part, and I'm going to be the hockey goon. Nobody comes near my guys. They do.
Enforcer.
I'm going to beat the shit. I'm going to be the enforcer. I'm going to beat them up, or sit on them, whatever it takes. And we're going to outscore everybody.
Okay. Awesome.
That's it.
Awesome. So you're just cleaning up. Yeah. Make it,
they're not going to pass to me.
Exactly.
They're not going to, they're going to know not to pass to me. I'm there to make sure that nobody hits them. I'll be like the Danny Satella of this 5-a-side, I'll be
enforcer.
The guy
the
that
mind games,
chomps on the ankles from behind. Yeah.
Okay. We need it in 5-a-side, minimal rules. I didn't say if there's refs or not, so we don't know for sure, but awesome answer, Erik. Love that. Ronaldinho is one that comes up for me. Definitely. He's in mine. And even though Messi guys like Messi, Pele, they're almost like so obvious that it's like, who else can we go with? But Henry, I think Henry might be first or maybe second time somebody's picked Henry. So it's a great shout, a great, pundit and part of the game culturally too.
Fiercely competitive guy. I mean, played angry, fiercely competitive. He was at his best when he was really pissed off. I remember him scoring a goal for Red Bull. We were winning like 3-0. And we gave up a late goal to make it 3-1. He came down and scored on purpose because he was angry. He almost he hit the ball so hard that it could have ripped the net because he was so angry. Like we can't give up a late goal when this we dominated and this game's over. So that I think you need that. For sure.
The competition, but then as a player and his style, like so composed and graceful too. So such a yin and yang figure, right? So that's a fun team.
The thing about him is he's better on a full field 11v11 because the speed and the athleticism nobody could keep up with. So 5-a-side is a little harder for him, but the other 3 make up for it in a small space. So
awesome.
Yeah, no defenders. I thought about a couple defenders, but no,
I love it.
We're just gonna outscore people.
Best defense, a good offense, right? Just pound the goals in. Yeah. And then kind of coming back to this central theme of the podcast, what we like to chat about here, and it's come up in different forms throughout our conversation. But could you complete the sentence, because football?
Oof. Well, you ask good questions.
Thank you.
Because football brings people together. That's our whole mission here, is bringing people together. In football, nobody does it better than that sport. And I every time I get in a cab somewhere else in the world, I always ask what their club is, whoever's driving, and they always have an answer, always. And that breaks the ice, and you start a conversation, and often they don't expect it out of an American. So yeah, it's the bringing people together. And over the decades, there have been a lot of people that have tried to use it to take people apart, but it just still keeps coming back to how it brings people together.
100%. Yeah, there's no better icebreaker of seeing somebody wearing a shirt or that simple question to lead things off. You mentioned taxi drivers. One of my, I think, like, you talk about experiences where, like, wow, this is what this game means, and how you think you're a fan, and then you meet somebody who, like, puts you to shame. I was in last year when my wife and I were in Uruguay. We're in Montevideo for a week. Got to see, like, the Centenario, site of the first ever World Cup. Incredible football culture there, and talk about producing players versus their size, like, the amount of ballers that have come out of there over the past century. But I got in the taxi after a late game, got in the taxi, two big clubs in Uruguay, Peñarol and Nacional, right? There's like the two major ones. I get in the cab, we start talking about football. My Spanish is okay. It's not incredible, but it's enough to start like that. And he was a fan of Nacional. He gave me a 20-minute lecture. So the ride was about 5 minutes. He kept me in the cab for 20 minutes without running the meter, just sitting there to give me a lecture about how Peñarol, his foes, his eternal foes, are frauds, and how what they claim, whatever number of trophies they've won and all of that, is not actually the truth because of this, that, and the other thing. And I was like, yeah,
I think you hit a nerve.
Incredible. Exactly. Yeah. 100%.
That's awesome.
So, yeah.
That's a good story.
Yeah. So, no, thank you so much for sharing your story. We're excited to see, the Cosmos come into Patterson, what you guys can do on and off the pitch within the community and for American soccer, and appreciate it. How should we, of course, you said LinkedIn for you if people want to get in touch, but where should we keep up to date on any new developments?
For us, it's nycosmos.com. Our big push right now is the membership program that I was just talking about. So that's going well for us, but sign up for memberships there. We're taking deposits for tickets, and we'll have more information on the website soon about how the tiers of the membership and how tickets are going to work. And we'll also have new information out there soon about some of the other sports and activities we're going to have.
Cool.
So yeah, that's the best place to find out what's going on with the Cosmos.
Awesome. All right. We'll get those links in the description, everyone. Thank you again, Erik, for being with us. Thank you all for listening, for watching, and we'll see you guys on the next episode. Peace.